Welcome back. In this brief lecture, we will provide pointers to some of the discussions we have had in the past. So, this is all about porous electrode theory in the context of electrochemical reactions. We have had a series of lectures in this topic. So please look at this lecture to get started on our discussions on porous electrode modeling. So earlier we have discussed this topic in the context of batteries and capacitors. We would provide a context in the with respect to fuel cells, but the concepts and the approach to the problem has already been covered. So what is the context? So in most of the electrochemical reactions, there is a constraint where the electrochemical reaction would occur. Typically, we want areas wherein there are three phases that are present. One phase is the gas phase, and there is an electronically conducting phase, and there is another phase which is ionically conducting. So if we have a system like this indicates gas phase transport. This indicates regions wherein electronic transport occurs. And this indicates regions wherein ion transport occurs. If you visualize such a system, this three-phase boundary occurs along this line. This is not very advantageous because the area wherein this three-phase boundary occurs is very limited. As opposed to this kind of a system, if we have a system wherein there is three-dimensional porosity, you can increase the interfacial area wherein three-phase boundary can be present. A two-dimensional projection of this system in the sense that a two-dimensional projection of a three-dimensional porous network doesn't really do justice, because the connectivity that exists between, let's say, electronically conducting phase, ionically conducting phase, and a phase which conducts the gases is not very clear in this kind of system. But what is important to understand is there is so-called a percolation pathway that exists in a three-phase boundary. Percolation pathway means there is a continuous pathway of three-phase boundary exists in this kind of system. It's a mixed ionic electronic conductor that allows for gas phase transport. So earlier we have discussed this in the context of ionic ionically conducting electrolytes that is made up of a liquid, but this is more widely applicable even in the context of, let's say, solid oxide fuel cell or high temperature fuel cell. So here the electrolyte conducts oxygen anions. In this region, there exists network for conducting hydrogen reactant. There is also water that is present because that is the product of these two species. And you need to have uh, regions that are able to conduct electrons. So the three phases which we are alluding to is the ion conducting electrolyte phase, there is gases, and the electronically conducting metallic phase. So we have looked at a low temperature fuel cell in the context of porous electrode in this lecture. Please refer to this lecture for the elaboration of so-called flooded agglomerate electrodes. Um, Again, the argument goes as follows. If you are just considering this kind of a planar electrode, the three-phase boundary is limited to a very narrow region. However, we want to increase the interfacial area wherein three-phase boundary is present. That's why we have a porous electrode. Here, the electrolyte is purely ion conducting. There exist regions which are purely gas phase reactant conducting. But in this regime, you have the porous electrode. So magnification of this region has um, particles, uh, and there are two kinds of pores that are present. There are, let's say, micropores that are present within the particle, and there are macropores with in between these particles. Again, a magnification of this region shows that there are regions within this particle wherein the micropores are flooded with electrolytes, and you have a catalyst supported on carbon wherein electronic conduction is possible, and electrocatalyst which is active towards a particular reaction is possible. So the particular reaction um, we are considering here is hydrogen, which is the reactant reacts with hydroxyls, which are conducted via these electrolytes to give rise to water and two electrons. So detailed elaboration of how to model these systems have been provided in earlier set of lectures on porous electrodes. So please refer to this lecture set. And these lectures were provided in the context in a more general framework, but the concepts are applicable to all three systems, that is, batteries, capacitors, and fuel cells that we are discussing in this series of lectures. So, in the next lecture or series of lectures, we will look at proton exchange membrane fuel cell. That will be the topic starting in the next lecture. Thank you.